Welcome to this week's MTD on Lockdown podcast, supporting engineering in unprecedented times. Today we are live from our homes discussing the week's events and, more importantly, why engineers need supporting more than ever in these times. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer with 25 years experience in the industry and a proud member of the MTD team. I have the pleasure to be joined by, firstly, Mr. Paul Jones, the founder and managing director of MTDCNC. Paul's a true advocate for engineering with over 25 years experience, from an apprentice at Rolls-Royce to working in sales for large global machine tool companies, which led to producing and founding MTDCNC, which is now probably one of the largest manufacturing technology and engineering platforms around the world. Welcome, Paul, and I hope you have some better jokes for us this evening.
Hello, dear. I listen to your introduction every time, and I would say you made one mistake there. It wasn't. I didn't do my apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce. It's I drive a Rolls-Royce. No, not really. But no, great to be here with you, Gio.
So that's not a bad joke. And a man that needs no introduction whatsoever, the Silver Fox himself, Colin Griffiths, who's never short of a joke or two. Colin is the director of the MTD Network. He's dedicated to helping manufacturers win more work, and that has never been as important as it is today. So welcome to this podcast, guys. It's an absolute pleasure. It's 6 o'clock in the evening on a Thursday night, and Colin, this is your time for well, you've got a beer there, but it's your wine appreciation night.
It is. The wine's just chilling at the moment, so a nice red in the fridge. Only joking. I want to take a step back though, Gio, because Gio, 25 years experience as an engineer here. How many years those were any good though? I mean, how much scrapping was going on there?
Oh, mate, I think when I started, I scrapped a lot. I did scrap a lot, but I did produce some decent parts as well. No. I got beat up a lot.
And Jonesy, you've always told us that you're a top salesman at a number of these companies prior to your eureka moment, not your streaker moment. But were you ever a top salesman, and have you got any trophies to prove it?
The answer to your question is yes and yes, but I can't get them for you at the moment.
Why not? Because you can't find them.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah, I melted them down and sold it. So,
I would politely ask then, the next podcast we do, why don't you bring them out to prove it to us? Because I think that's only reasonable, because I can bring out some of my trophies as well.
Could you? What have you got trophies for then, Colin?
That'll be a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you wait and see. They're better than yours, though. Anyway, Wine Appreciation Night. I did ask, I know we're going to talk about engineering, but Wine Appreciation Night, I'm having a crafty beer just to keep going. I've stocked up just in case it does go on a little bit, but hey ho, you never know. But Mr. Albanese, Gio to our friends, he recommended a Sangiovese or a Primitivo. They're the expensive ones from your range. That's why you recommend them, cheeky so.
They're actually middle of the range, actually, but they're definitely my favourites. They are the middle of the range.
You told me that's why you charged me 50 quid a bottle.
No, the Amarone and the Amarone and the Ripasso are the more dear wines, but they're not too bad. They're for a man of your calibre, Colin, more than affordable.
And two massive fun. And someone said this is a bit like Floyd on 4, isn't it? As the show goes on, we're probably going to get a little bit more. Well, can't play a camera live, but a little bit more tipsy. Anyway, moving on. Are we talking engineering, guys?
Yeah. So the point of this podcast, really, Colin, is we're into week 2 of our MTD lockdown. Effectively, this is the second podcast that we're actually doing remotely. The second one. And last week we were discussing, the week's events. This week we're actually going to be discussing how are engineers getting on, and why do they need support more than ever? You're on the front line, effectively speaking to the end users every day, Colin. What feedback have you been getting?
Well, put me under pressure. Well, first of all, if I don't know if anybody's been speaking to Paul, but it's not furlonged. That's what a horse runs along the length. Furlong. Let's clarify that. furlough. It's based on the it comes from Danish, not a Danish pastry, Paul. So back off. Where when the soldiers, when they weren't fighting, they were furloughed. There you go. How's that for a bit of a very boring trivia? Anyway, moving on. A lot of engineers, maybe 50-50 have furloughed a lot of staff, but what they've done, a lot of engineers have not skilled up, they've invested in automation, so your sliders, your robots, your gantries and things like that. I mean, great example was Stuart from Empire yesterday. He was on MTD Daily. He's got a whole raft of sliders there and the CMZ with the gantry. He hasn't furloughed any staff, but he's really, really busy doing all these ventilator parts, and he can run 24/7. So that's a good side of things in terms of there's a lot of engineers are busy. Really, really busy. I won't quote one directly because I can't. We're live, but he said that they're something deep in work. They're running 24/7, 12.5-hour shifts. It's just absolutely gone crazy.
Yeah. And I think
Stuart was a really good interview. It was really encouraging to talk to him and hear that. Although I know you say he's making ventilator parts, Colin, his involvement in the medical is actually quite limited. But what he is doing is he's still busy with. So where we have people, engineers, saying that it's all medical at the moment. They're the only companies that are busy. That isn't really coming out being the case. I think companies that were busy doing their general subcontract work are still keeping their heads above water in a lot of instances. But you're dead right, Colin. Not often I'll say that. I think a lot of the success of these companies that are still busy, you tend to find and see that they're using, the latest technologies, automation, and of course, when you have got this social distancing in place, the more staff you've got in a workshop, the more difficult it is to be able to practice that. So, of course, automation is a real help there.
Well, yeah, Paul, I don't like to be corrected, but I'm going to have to accept that. Yeah, Stuart did say, actually, I don't think he was doing many ventilator parts, but he's really, really busy. But didn't you have social distancing before this all came in, Paul? Because, well, should we say no more on that?
Have you got your Bob Monkhouse book of jokes with you tonight?
Yeah, I've got it from you.
I keep seeing you turn around and look at, I think you've got them written on the wall or something, have you?
Behind the screen, so I can just, quickly reference them without, making it too obvious.
I've just noticed that Cog still are watching the show with a cheeky Hendrix. Now they're supplying products to manufacture the ventilator parts. So we're dealing with both sides, aren't we? We're dealing with the sellers of equipment, and we're also dealing with the end users that are manufacturing the parts and staying busy. And the manufacturers out there, in my opinion, not getting enough credit in the public domain for what they're actually doing at the minute. I think it's absolutely amazing. But looking at it from
very quickly.
Yeah.
If people don't know what a Cogsdill actually supplying.
Yeah, well, Cogsdill are supplying the roller burnishing tools for the internal bores. Right. I don't know what components they're actually manufacturing with them. However, it's just one particular component product that's being supplied out there to manufacture these parts. I mean, Paul done the technical corner that went out this week. I believe it was Tuesday, Paul, for the robo drills from Fanuc. And they're being used, and they're working perfectly, because there's still a necessity for equipment in this particular moment in time, and people still need to produce parts. So, I mean, looking at it from both perspectives, obviously it's a bad situation that we're in. There's no doubt about that. But roller burnishing and deburring tools, it's just come on there. What are engineers saying to you, Paul?
One quick point, if I may. You said that Cogsdill are doing the internal bores. I'm assuming when Paul's out and about, he's an external bore with his really bad gags.
I said good jokes tonight, Colin.
Yeah. Honestly, I know people might be surprised, but I live alone, and I've been stuck at home all day. I need to, exfoliate. Is that the right word?
No. Yeah, got you.
So sorry, Paul. Looking at it from both sides, obviously you're dealing predominantly more with maybe the sellers, and Colin's dealing more predominantly with the end users. we're both in it together. I mean, you had Hoffman on with Tim Paddison on today on Daily News, and he was saying how he was working remotely with his clients to help them during this time. It's a joint effort. What are your thoughts on this?
This week, it's good to do this every week because it allows you to look back on what you've done this week and who you've spoken to. And yeah, the sort of daily broadcasts that we're doing, we've spoken to all ends of the spectrum. Yeah, companies that are, supplying machines, supplying cutting tools, and of course also the end users that we're talking about, like Stuart. And it's just really interesting to get a feel for how they're reacting to the situation. I would say at the moment that the machine tool suppliers specifically in some areas, certainly on the sliding head side, are still very busy, and they're seeing a massive upturn in demand for their product, but they need to deliver it quickly. They need to, install the machines quickly because these parts for the medical sector are needed very quickly. It's also interesting to hear about the supply of some of these parts down the supply chain and how so many engineers are involved in these projects. It's like the suppliers have not just selected 1, 2, 3 or 4 companies to make all these components. They've actually spread it quite thinly across the supply chain. So there's a lot more companies involved than maybe in other types of projects. Now, I wonder whether there's an element of that where they're just trying to keep lots of engineering companies busy, which is good, or they're literally just trying to get these parts as fast as possible. And when these projects are finished, it will be interesting to see where the market is. But certainly from the machine tool suppliers perspective, I'm hearing some good and bad things. I'm hearing that certainly the aerospace sector and things like that have really quietened up. But as I say, in the sliding head area, as you mentioned, FANUC robo drills, automation FANUC robots and things like that there's still a demand out there, and they're still being sold. So doing this daily show that we do really does keep you in tune with what's going on. And I've got to say, when you look at social media at the moment, it's just awash with what people are up to, isn't it? It just shows that this is the way people communicate now. This is the way people see what everybody else is up to. So it's good to be able to be at the forefront of that.
Matt Janessa just popped up on social media as you were speaking, Paul. He's swapped his production now, completely manufacturing ventilator parts 24/7. So well done, Matt. A big thank you to you. It's absolutely brilliant news. Now we had
that contract that Micron Subcon or Microlock have got on the back. That's actually off the back of MTD Network.
Brilliant.
We've got a huge contract, and it's not just Microlock. There's a Micron Subcon. There's a load of engineers who've all taken, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, because there's loads. I know Steve at Newport CNC is cracking on doing a load of work as well at the same time. So that's it's just been fantastic, and it's been enabled these people who are looking to supply these ventilator parts. They can come to us and rather than to phone or email loads and loads of different companies, they can put it all on one site, pop it in there, and we'll go to loads and loads of engineers, and they've all got different skill sets. So you can all do your milling, your turning, your EDM, whatever it might be. So it's just worked absolutely perfect for this example. It really has.
Colin, when you say come to us, you're referring to the MTD network. You're actually, and what we referred to at the very beginning of this podcast, the importance of supporting the engineers at this moment in time. That's exactly what you are doing with the network, and it's really proving. It's really proving that it's actually working now. You're winning a lot of work. And just as you mentioned there, Microlock is just one of many examples of that. How for people that are looking to win that work, how should they get in touch with you briefly? It's not a sales pitch, but there's probably people out there that are looking to get work and keep themselves going. How should they get in touch with you?
It's as simple. I mean, we won't have it complicated. It's as simple as going to mtd.network on your internet browser, and then there's a join button, the red button, and then that'll come through to me, and I'll get in contact. I had a couple of guys today actually, so I haven't actually spoken to them today, but I've got to follow them up tomorrow morning. But there's loads of people out there. But it's not just about that. It's also about we want to get these guys work, especially at this moment. It's about showcasing and promoting what they do as well, because the engineers are busy. Like Matt said there, he's busy. He's working 24/7, which is probably a first for Matt Janess. A little bit harsh, I know, but I could say that. I've known him for at least 3 weeks. It's about showcasing what they can do as well. So people will see, wow, you're making this type of part. Obviously, that's not a part, that's my hand. But, we've been showcasing this on MTD Daily, where the engineers have been saying, well, it's all well and good having a chat, but look, this is what we do. We make this part, we've got this machine. And Stuart was a great example because he actually walked around the machine shop. So just it's a way of actively promoting them essentially, and it's so easy. We do it. They can get their head stuck into that machine, and we could do all the hard work, I'd like to think. But I've never worked a machine properly. Well, I've been in it's like, well, I'm a bit like you and Paul. Never worked a machine properly.
You've done some tapping not long back. Remember we had that visit at Alan N? You've done a little bit of tapping.
Manufactured. No, Alan. Come on, Gio.
Alan R. That's sorry, my mistake.
You have to say the next one in. Richard Demchinsky. Go on in.
No, I'm not even going to try. I just want to go back a step now. We mentioned automation. You mentioned automation. Paul's mentioned automation with the robo job, the robo drill and the automation, the FANUC robots that also can accompany that milling machine. Now, we had Hydrofeed in for a podcast remotely, obviously, yesterday, Ashley Page and Martin Page, and we were discussing the current situation, but we're also discussing automation and how they're getting on in this current climate. They're still doing installations, but it's quite obvious to see at the minute, not just with automation, but the latest technology. People that have been investing in the latest technology, such as automation, sliding head technology, Industry 4.0, working remotely. These are the people at this present moment in time that really do seem to be winning the work and do seem to be benefiting. Not that anyone is benefiting, that's not probably the right word to say, but do seem to be getting the work at this moment in time.
Another point there, we had Martin on. We've got him on an MTD Daily, and he was talking about furloughing. I know, but I didn't question at the time because I was just in the studio watching. But he was on about furloughing guys, and then bringing them back, and I wasn't 100% sure about whether you could do that or not. And I did question him on it, just to make sure. And as I understand it, and you need to check your details here, but I think you can furlough them for 3 weeks and then bring them back, and then you can furlough them again if required. I don't know the ins and outs. You need to go onto the government website. So
just on Martin's Daily, what I thought was really interesting was some of the things you don't think about. Him saying that even though they are still installing bar feeds and they've got quite a lot of orders that are coming through, the things that they have to concern themselves now with is, if you're going to send a guy to Newcastle to install a bar feed, is he going to be able to eat? Where's he going to be able to stay? So I hadn't necessarily considered some of those aspects, and there's some of the other challenges that these guys are facing at the moment, understandably, and that must be exactly the same for the machine tool suppliers. Gio, I was just going to ask yourself. You obviously did also podcasts this week, or you've upped the frequency of your podcasts, so they're now 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and as we're doing now. We had Hoffman on the other day. What did you take from the podcast with them about marketing in these sort of challenging times and what you do? Because I thought some of the points that John made were quite interesting.
Yeah, so you're quite right, Paul. Now we're increasing the podcast frequency to 3 times a week. The same with question time. That's now once a week instead of once a month. And this is due to the increased demand with everyone being at home and watching the content that we're producing. And let me just say that, in my opinion, this is a perfect time for everyone to re-educate themselves, look at the content that we're producing, and to be able to maybe introduce some new processes and products when this is all over. And it will be over soon, hopefully, sooner rather than later. It was a brilliant podcast. You were involved in the podcast with me, Paul, with John Muskett, who's the UK marketing manager from the Hoffman group in the UK. He was tasked with raising awareness of Hoffman in the UK. Now, they're a €1 billion organisation globally, so they're not a small outfit in any way, shape or form. However, they've only launched officially in the UK, I think it was August last year, 2019. They've been in the UK from about 2007, I believe, but quite low key. They had their official launch, and like I said, John's been tasked with that. Now, he believes, to answer your question, sorry, it's gone on a little bit, Paul. He believes that marketing at this time, it's more imperative than it's ever been, because not only to build up your brand, but also to educate people. Like I mentioned, people have got more time now to learn. When you're under the cosh and you're working 50, 60-hour weeks just to get the parts out the door, or you don't get that luxury to be able to think, what am I doing right? But also, more importantly, what am I doing wrong? This is the time to really be able to analyse what you're doing within your manufacturing facility. And when we get out of this, which we will, make it better. And I think that the people that have all, like we mentioned a few minutes ago, invested in all that latest technology are really, not the right word, benefiting, but they're really seeing, they're being able to work still. They're being able to win the work. They're being able to produce the parts a lot more, in a lot faster way, a lot more efficiently. It's just really, really highlighting that. Sorry, that's a...
Yeah. Cheers, Gio, for your
sorry.
You thought going into politics? Actually, that's a nice segue, and that's not one of those stupid bikes you ride around, Paul. I know you stood on one and it broke. That's another story. Chatting to the engineers, we're talking about furloughing, but some have been furloughed. Yes, I know. Some are very busy. You're talking about the automation there and things like that, which is absolutely fantastic. But I was chatting to an engineer today, and he's going, Colin, where's the support for these for engineers in terms of finance and things like that? And I've been speaking to finance guys as well, and at the moment they're just messing around. They don't know what's going on. The banks are just not coming to the table. They won't lend people money, and he's trying to get some support via the government website, and trying to find. And he said he can go. Well, he hasn't gone down to his local pub, but his local pub can get £10,000 grant. Another one, which is a bit more turnover, can get £25,000 grant. But there's nothing on there for engineers at the moment that he could see. I might be wrong, and it doesn't happen often. I accept that. But what support are the government giving in terms of engineers who haven't got loads of business at the moment, but also the finance companies? Because at the moment, I understand it. Yet some finance companies are saying, well, we'll hold your payments for 3 months, which is absolutely fantastic to help cut the guys out. But they're not. There's I'm trying to think what it's called, C-bills or something like that. There's a lending scheme, but it's just sounds like it's an absolute mess at the moment. And these people are in. Some of them are in. They don't want to close down, but they might be pushed to because they're going to run out of cash. So we need to know where this money is going to come from and how the government to support on that side of things, and the banks. It's all well and good. I mean, there's the chief executive of RBS NatWest Group on last night, and she was just waffling, and I'm just really, really disappointed. Sorry, I'm not going to hold back on that because
I think
businesses need support right now, and waiting for 2 or 3 hours, for example, is just ridiculous.
I think what you are saying though, Colin, is that and I would agree with this. The industry does need to get back on track as fast as possible. I know we're obviously in these very difficult times, but I always try and think and always try and say that every day that goes by, we're getting a day closer to to getting back to some semblance of normality. It must be very challenging, for government at the moment to try and satisfy the needs of every business. Obviously, with their primary concern being the health of people within the country. I did see a lot on social media today about manufacturers receiving a letter which was encouraging, which basically said that manufacturing needs to keep going, and that with a heart of the economy, and thanks for the support during this time. And in fact, I've seen and spoken to probably a dozen engineers over the past day or so that have received that sort of correspondence. So I think they're aware that we're in it, but I don't disagree. I think any support that can be given to us at this time. I mean, as a business, we're lucky. We haven't furloughed or furlonged, as you say, Colin, anyone. But our business is different. We work.
I'm going to
carry on day to day. So
if you know what interject means, it means sharp and let me talk. But sorry, it's not a political debate, things like that. But what is the value of sending out letters to people? These guys who are running out of cash rapidly, they want an easy route where they can, even if they don't want to be just a subsidy or charitable. They just want some money to get them through, and they want an easy way to do it, and not through loads of hurdles and stuff. What I'm saying is the government need to make it a lot simpler for them. These guys aren't doing it because they want to just get the money and it's a bit of free cash. That's not. They're struggling and they want some support and they want an easy route to market. That's all they want. In fact, I'm going to drop in there because just before we start on this, and I'm reading down here, there was an advert saying gov.uk/business-support. I haven't had a chance to read it, but hopefully there's some decent stuff in there. That was only just before we went live. So, and again, it's not a political rant or anything like that. I just think they need to simplify it for the engineers out there, because the NHS staff do an absolutely fantastic job, but the engineering, manufacturing side of things, they're playing a key role at the moment because they're making these critical components, so they need that support, absolutely 100%.
Yeah, I think in this moment in time, I think there are going to be casualties on every front. It's awful to say, but I think that's the reality of it. And I just think that we've just got to try and get through this together and try and work together as much as we can. And we have been seeing a lot of unity amongst all of the manufacturers. And there's one industry, in my opinion, that never seems to stop. The NHS is obviously one, but manufacturing is also another. They always seem to be going from strength to strength, and we will get through this. I think, Paul, you mentioned to me in a telephone conversation recently, as an engineer, if there's a problem, you'll solve it. And there'll be some very clever kind of doctor somewhere that is going to solve the problem that we're currently in at the minute. It's temporary and we will get through. We just got to kind of hang in there, really. It's tough for absolutely everyone. But, together we can get through it. And like, hopefully, people are enjoying and learning from the content that we're producing. Your daily news every day, Paul, yours, Colin, the network show that I watched this evening. Not only we hope it's educational, but also it's something that for people to take their mind off what's actually going on at the minute, because it is a little bit, I find it personally, a little bit surreal. It just doesn't seem real.
That's what surreal is, I suppose. Also, just on a light-hearted note, the show we do on MTD Network, well, I don't do it. I'd like to get all the praise for it, but Gina, our social media guru, is brilliant. She does it, and it's serious because it showcases what engineers are doing and things like that. But it's a light-hearted show, so just people are working hard. They're a bit stressed or whatever. That is definitely worth watching. It really is. And also the guys in the background. I know Josh, for example, he's editing it, and I'll tell you what, it's 5 minutes. I can say 5 minutes of your life you won't get back. That's not fair. It's actually very, very funny. It really is. They're a pair of idiots, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have humour in these times. People need cheering up, and I can't wait till we get out of this. And I think that when we do come out the other end, I'd like to think that some good comes from this. I really, really hope that it will, and I truly believe that it will. Too. There was a story that went out. There was a poem that I seen on social media actually that was written in 1847, I believe, but then it got re-released in 1919. In 1919, there was another pandemic, and the poem is literally like it would be relevant today in what we're going through now. And they got over it then, and we will get over it again now.
I've just got a question. Sorry, question, Gio. Is that true? Because I didn't know you were this educated and reading poetry and stuff like that.
I'm not educated.
You could probably do a limerick. That's about it, isn't it?
I think before we wrap up, guys, I'd just conclude with saying one thing, that next week we've got some really good guests coming onto the show. We've got Stephen, Managing Director of DMG Mori. We've got Ed James from Citizen Machinery.
MTD Daily.
This is the MTD Daily. Yeah, we've got CG Tech, the suppliers of the Vericut, talking to us about software. And we've also got a couple of, really quite high-profile engineers as well. So we've got a good mix of, a good blend of people next week. So worth tuning into the show every day. Released about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But of course, we've got the bank holiday weekend this weekend, so we won't be back on stream until Tuesday. But I think if I was going to summarise this week, and I think that's probably a good thing to do, this week has been an interesting week. I'm glad we are at the end of it, because we're another day or another week closer to getting back to normal. But I think in general, it's been encouraging to see the activity on social media. It's been encouraging to hear from some of the contributors we've had over the course of the last 7 days. And it's been great to see our channel has continued to flourish during this time.
That's brilliant.
And it's been great that we haven't had any contact with you, Paul, apart from over digital media.
No, thank you very much, Colin. Thank you very much, Paul. I just want to end really with, on Tuesday, because it's Bank Holiday Monday, we have question time live at 11 o'clock with Tim Patterson from the Hoffman Group UK. And we have a podcast on Monday that's going to be released from Casra about what would you expect from the perfect machine tool. We'll have another podcast that will be released on Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe to all of the podcasts that MTD are now producing, and keep in touch with everything that's going on. Thank you very much, Colin, Paul. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and download. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Well, happy Easter.
Happy Easter, yeah. Stay safe.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on MTDCNC.com.